An update on Saraya's AEW contract. How long has the former Divas champion signed with All Elite Wrestling? We're going to break all of that down, plus discuss if she can or cannot wrestle ahead of tonight's edition of Dynamite on TBS. We're going to talk also about Matt Jackson from the Young Bucks, still currently suspended, but has for the first time spoken out after his suspension as part of the brawl regarding CM Punk, Kenny Omega, his brother Nick, and A still at All Out. Buddy Matthews has been rumored to be leaving All Elite Wrestling. We have a rumor killer on that. What is Matthews doing right now? And Bobby Fish discusses the rumor that he asked Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly to leave AEW with him. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. So let's start off talking about Saraya. Now, I'm going to do my very best to pronounce this correctly. Of course, Saraya has taken to social media recently and informed everyone that with Excalibur, Tony Schiavone, Taz, when they were commentating and talking over her debut last week on the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite, they were not pronunciating her name correctly. It's not Saraya, it's Saraya. So I'm going to do my very best in this video to make sure that I pronounce it correctly. It's pronounced Saraya. She even posted that on her social media. So let's talk about Saraya. Let's talk about her AEW contract. Of course, as I mentioned, she made her debut with All Elite Wrestling last week inside Arthur Ashe Stadium on the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite on TBS. And Saraya is All Elite. And according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, it looks like she's going to be All Elite for quite some time. The former Page, of course, hit free agency early in July, and according to Fightful, they are reporting All Elite Wrestling made contact with her not long after her deal with the WWE expired. Now, there was word as far back as StarCast weekend that the former WWE Divas champion did have interest from All Elite Wrestling, though not many details were known about this until last week. Now, of course, StarCast weekend was at that was the end of July, I believe it was. So we're talking a good few months ago at this point. And it must be said that Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select were the first people to actually report about AEW's interest in Saraya last week prior to the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite. Now, sources familiar with the situation have told Fightful Select that Saraya has agreed to a 3-year contract with All Elite Wrestling. Now, it must be said, no one's really sure if there are option years at play here. We do know that Tony Khan does like the optional year to extend. He's had option years on the likes of the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and others. He also had an option year on Cody Rhodes, which he decided not to exercise after coming to a conclusion on an AEW exit alongside Rhodes. Now, again, we don't know if there is an option deal at play here, or an optional year at play here for Saraya, so until we know anything different, we'll have to wait and see. However, Fightful have been told for the amount of money it was signed for, it largely implies that she will be wrestling in some capacity, and that's the big takeaway here. Of course, the big takeaways from this story are the fact she signed to a 3-year contract with All Elite Wrestling, but I suppose the biggest takeaway is that for the amount of money they're paying her, she has to be wrestling essentially. She's on the pay level of a wrestler and of a high-paid wrestler. They wouldn't just bring her in to be a high-paid manager, because AEW, frankly, wouldn't be getting value for money on Saraya if they were paying her this amount of money. So we'll circle back to that in a second. Now, Fightful haven't been given any indication of whether or not Saraya has actually been cleared, but of course she is set to speak on AEW Dynamite tonight live on TBS. It's also reported via Fightful Select that numerous talent within All Elite Wrestling had went to bat for Saraya and put in a good word, but one AEW name said she didn't need it since there was interest when she became available. Those that Fightful spoke to on the roster do seem excited about her joining the company. So as I mentioned, biggest takeaways there really are the fact that she signed to a 3-year deal, and I suppose the biggest part of it is that for the amount of money she's getting paid, the expectation is she's going to be wrestling. Again, we don't have any concrete or firm confirmation that indeed she has been cleared or anything like that. I lean on the side of she has been cleared, and the reason I lean into that is just as a fan, not even looking at any of these stories, I look at how was she presented last week? And she was presented, in my opinion, in a manner of a wrestler. They were saying about how, I think it was Taz said, she can flat out go. And yes, there was no physical contact during the segment between her and Britt Baker, but There didn't need to be, and frankly, there shouldn't have been. What, you want Paige to come out there and start, hitting people with page turners? That doesn't make any sense. Or her striking forearms. That would be such a waste. Because of her history physically, the moment she does get physical, or the moment she announces she's here to wrestle in All Elite Wrestling, that's a second pop. Why would you blow that big announcement when she's just making her debut, when she's just making her first appearance in All Elite Wrestling? So I think that I didn't look too much into the lack of physicality last week. I think also I myself feel like I've learned my lesson a little bit from incidents or like people like Sting making their AEW debut. I was convinced that Sting was not going to be wrestling for All Elite Wrestling when he came in. The fact that he was in his 60s, he had retired a couple of years earlier in a similar situation to Paige. He was forced to retire, suffered an injury in the ring, a neck injury, and the general feeling was this guy is not going to wrestle. He should be wrestling at his age anyway, and given the injuries, whatever. And there were reports at the time when he first signed with AEW, he's not going to wrestle. He's just going to be a manager. If he does wrestle, it'll be a cinematic match, smoke and mirrors, this, that, and the other. Sting's wrestling pretty much every month in AEW. He's taking bumps through tables, which I don't recommend because that is only going to end one way. It's going to end in disaster, frankly, for Sting. But I do think Saraya's going to wrestle. I really, really do. And I know that Dave Meltzer posted a report, when was it, earlier this week, late last week, saying that as of a few weeks ago, she hadn't been cleared, but that was a couple of weeks ago. Things can change pretty quickly. When did she sign her contract with All Elite Wrestling? If she signed it a week ago, that might have been because she finally presented a situation where she had been cleared. It had been written in previous reports by the likes of Sean Ross Sapp that she was open to wrestling again and she hoped to get cleared again. Now, my concern, as I'm sure a lot of other people's concern, is that it's one thing for her to get cleared by her doctors. I want her to be cleared by her doctors in addition to AEW's medical team. I want her to be cleared by multiple doctors. She's only 30. This is what's crazy about Saraya, is that she's been around for such a long period of time. When she made her debut on the main roster in 2014, she was 21 years old. It was they actually waited. So I think with her, again, it's a risk versus reward situation. If there is a way that she can do it and do it safely, and she has been cleared to take bumps or certain kinds of bumps, then it's a massive plus for AEW. But those saying that Saraya coming in to AEW is a game changer for the women's division, unfortunately, I don't really see it like that. I see it as nothing will change in AEW's women's division as long as they have the mentality they have right now towards women's wrestling. And the mentality they have is the same mentality they've had since the start of AEW, which is one match on Dynamite per week in the middle of the show. That's about it. And I know Tony Khan can go on his media calls and he can say, well, the only reason we do that and there aren't as many main events is because we have to look at what draws. And that's such a dumb remark to me, because what will draw is what you tell your fans to care about. When WWE, for instance, look how badly they treated females for decades in WWE. And initially, when they were trying to get females over, was it working initially on the main roster? No, it took time. You have to hammer it over in that case. You have to give the crowd a reason to care. You have to put the woman in main event and say, I don't care if it draws or not. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it over and over and over and over again. I'm going to get these talents over to the point where it becomes a draw. And that's what you have to do if you're Tony Khan. Just bringing in names like Saraya and going, see, big female star, draw. No. You have to have more than just one women's match per week. You have to have regular TV main events and pay-per-view main events featuring the females. You have to create a female stars, and actually put some emphasis on female wrestling. And you can bring in Saraya, you can bring in Sasha Banks, you can bring in whoever. Until you start giving the fans a reason to care, and more than just a one segment or couple segment female match in the middle of the show, that's not telling the fans to care, because clearly you don't care. That's the difference. Now, again, Saraya, as she was the spark of a women's revolution in WWE, if she could do it again in another company, that would be tremendous. My only concern is that WWE, and specifically Triple H at the time, wanted to make female wrestling matter. I don't know if I see that in AEW right now, but we'll have to wait and see. Now let's talk about Matt Jackson, one of the EVPs of AEW, still currently suspended due to the incident after the all-out media scrub involving him, his brother Nick Jackson, Kenny Omega, CM Punk, and Ace Steel. But Matt Jackson is celebrating the release of the Young Bucks shoes by thanking fans. Today, Champs Sports released its Young Bucks shoes in collaboration with Matt and Nick Jackson and Diodora Lifestyle. Now, in his Instagram stories, Matt said it was a dream come true to get his own shoe because he and his brothers always dreamed of playing in the NBA and having their own shoes. Unfortunately, they were a little bit too small to be in the NBA, but they did make it in wrestling. At the end of the video, Matt thanks fans for their support over the last 18 years and said, quote, "I really can't wait to see you guys very soon. Thanks." Now, the former AEW World Tag Team and Trios champions are currently suspended for their role in the altercation with CM Punk and Ace Steel at All Out. It's unknown when they will return to television. Of course, once we get an update on that, we'll talk about it here on the channel. So, look, people might be reading too much into "we'll see you again very soon." I don't think we'll see the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega on AEW television until that third-party investigation is complete, and I don't know how close it is to being complete. Out of all of the people that were suspended, and by people I mean the people that were actually physically involved in that locker room in Chicago, so CM Punk, Ace Steel, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, clearly Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are the likely party to return to AEW sooner than CM Punk or Ace Steel. CM Punk's not returning for 9 months, minimum, if he ever returns. The reason he's not returning for 9 months is because he's recovering from surgery. We posted, I think it was yesterday, we spoke about CM Punk and the recent picture of him in the brace after undergoing tricep surgery after sustaining that injury at All Out in the main event against Jon Moxley. He had surgery just days after. He's out of action for up to 9 months, and realistically, the more that time goes on, you feel like he's probably never going to return to All Elite Wrestling, quite frankly. And given the fact that the eyewitness accounts are starting to line up more and more with maybe the Young Bucks' perception of events, i.e. CM Punk threw the first punch. The Young Bucks didn't kick the door down. However, there is still a disagreement, according to recent reports, about how aggressive the Young Bucks were and if CM Punk felt threatened, which is why he decided to punch Matt Jackson. That's still a topic of debate, but more and more as time goes on, the Young Bucks version of events are starting to line up more against CM Punk's. And as I spoke about yesterday, if that is the case, CM Punk threw the first punch, he's out of action. It might be a case of CM Punk never returns and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega do. But even if they do, I don't think they should be executive vice presidents anymore. I think that structure that is in place in AEW clearly is not working. Yes, they were part of the founding members of the company. Good for them. But they're not in control of anything in that company. It's Tony Khan's company. They might have been, part of the founding original members and all that kind of stuff and brought the momentum with them. But it's Tony Khan's company and it's Tony Khan's money and Tony Khan's making the big decisions there. So, in my opinion, I don't think they should be executive vice presidents anymore. I think if we are going to have EVPs in the company, it should be Tony's team of people that he respects and confides in around him. And I don't think they should be talents in ring. I think you should look at people like William Regal, look at people like Arn Anderson, look at other people within the company. I think that's what you've got to look at. The inmates can no longer run the asylum in All Elite Wrestling. And it's still no coincidence, I would argue, that in the weeks that they've been away from television, yes, the number for the Grand Slam edition of Dynamite maybe wasn't what they wanted it to be last week. Yes, it was down year on year, but AEW has less momentum. They were still the number one show on cable for Wednesday night. They still did over 1 million viewers, and I think that'll be a bit of an eye-opening experience, frankly, for Tony Khan, because I think he'll probably look at it and say, actually, you know what? These people in this company, like your Punks, like your Omegas, like your Young Bucks, that were at one point deemed indispensable, really aren't all that indispensable. And yeah, they'd probably go to WWE, and yeah, they'd make a load of money, and they do very well. CM Punk, no, he probably just will never wrestle again, unfortunately. But those other names, I'm sure they'd do very well if they went elsewhere. But, they're not indispensable. As Chris Jericho said, pro wrestling and AEW will move on. I don't see them disappearing anytime soon. This isn't a WCW situation. There are strong similarities to, say, the locker room and the dressing room, but as Tony Khan said himself, there's a lot more money there than was there previously in WCW. So That's an interesting story, which I'm sure is nowhere near concluding just yet. Buddy Matthews, speaking of people possibly leaving the company, Buddy Matthews has been rumored to be exiting All Elite Wrestling. He created waves in the wrestling world when reports suggested he had requested his release from the company. Of course, one of his partners in the House of Black, Malachi Black, recently took to social media for the second time to dispel rumors that he had been released by AEW, saying that he was just taking time off. He had been allowed to take time off, etc., etc. Buddy Matthews, of course, got sprayed in the face by the Great Muta last week, and then he, at an indie event, said he needed to take time away to recalibrate, etc. And that led to other people saying was Buddy Matthews and Malachi Black were these two former WWE names that wanted to return to the company, and were they going to be leaving AEW? I mean, there was lots of reports late last week, early this week, that Matthews was done, seemingly with AEW, or the perception was inside the company that Matthews was done. This, a bit like Malachi Black, appears not to be the case. PW Insider recently reported that the Australian star had to travel to his home country to sort out some issues with his work visa to continue working in the United States. The outlet seemingly debunked rumours of Matthews asking for his release or the promotion suspending him following last week's Dynamite. So, again, we're in a bit of a really weird and murky situation at the moment, aren't we, with all of this talent that's in AEW that wants to go back to WWE or possibly has requested their release. You've got Malachi Black, who it was reported that he had requested his release, which he did confirm. But then it was subsequently reported that he was gone from the company, he had a conditional release, and then Malachi Black's come out and said, that's not the case, I'm just taking time off. You've got Buddy Matthews who's saying, I need to take some time away to recalibrate, and then that's followed by reports saying that he's possibly going to be done with AEW, and then it comes out that no, he's just back in Australia to get his work visa sorted. There is a massive disconnect in what is going on right now with these instances. So what it looked like, Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, they're not going anywhere. They might be off television for a little while, but they're not going anywhere in terms of going back to WWE anytime soon, nor should they really, because they're under contract. However, that brings up the discussion once again of should talent be kept under contract if they're unhappy. I've kept the same energy when I criticised WWE for it, so I've got to criticise AEW for it at the same time. You can't change opinions like that, in my opinion. Finally, Bobby Fish. A bit of a lightning rod recently. Now he's in Impact Wrestling, of course. But Bobby Fish has given his side of the story. Now, Fish left AEW at the end of August after the two sides couldn't agree on a new contract. During his time in AEW, of course, Fish was aligned with Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole in the Undisputed Elite. After his AEW departure, though, it was rumoured that Fish had asked Cole and O'Reilly to leave All Elite Wrestling and join him in WWE. Now, of course, it was previously reported by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select that, quote, it was vehemently denied by numerous AEW sources, and WWE sources have stated that there haven't even been talks between Bobby Fish and the company. Now, speaking on his Undisputed podcast, didn't even know Bobby Fish had a podcast, who doesn't nowadays, but he said, quote, guess what, boys, after over 25 years in the wrestling business, I don't know how contracts work myself, he said sarcastically with a laugh. What was most troublesome and amusing at the same time was how many outlets picked up on, if there's anybody who knows that it's totally fabricated information, it would be me, Adam, Kyle, Hunter, the people that they're talking about who didn't do any of the things. None of it is real. Even people like Jim Cornette picked it up and commented on it. Jim and I always had a great relationship. If I'm being honest, Jim hurt my feelings a little bit by believing some bullshit about me so easily. It is what it is, but that's what sucks the most about it. The people that write this stuff, there is no checks and balances. There are no ramifications when you are in the wrong, and they will continue to write whatever they want or whatever they're going to write, and it gets picked up by whomever. The fact or fiction line doesn't matter, and the whole thing is absurd. I appreciate the fact that AEW did what they did. It is no favor to me, it's just the truth. There is no favor needed. Let's just all tell the truth. Fish said media should be better about what they report, and fans should be better when it comes to deciphering reports and not running with everything that is out there. Now, I agree in terms of people should be better with what they report. The idea, though, that social media and fans should be better about deciphering what is fact and fiction, unfortunately, Bobby, that ship sailed a long time ago. And that doesn't have anything to do with pro wrestling. That has to do with life. Life, politics, sport, you name it. There is an abundance nowadays of information at people's fingertips on social media, on the internet, and there is just so much. You can get caught up in a cycle of hearing and reading what you want to hear, what you want to read, irrespective of if it's the truth or not. The algorithms on these websites work whereby they just keep feeding you what they know is going to keep you on the websites longer. That is how it works. And I agree, people should be better at deciphering these things and trying to figure out what is fact or fiction, but ultimately, people don't care to. They don't. That is the modern day of social media and the internet, unfortunately. But Bobby Fish is denying it, and AEW sources are denying it also, so it would appear that Bobby Fish did not ask Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly to leave AEW and join him in a return to WWE. But there you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news stories. Let me know, AEW. Oh, terrible word. AEW news stories. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.